Hello, and welcome to the East Africa Business Podcast. This show is all about showcasing entrepreneurs who are building businesses in this exciting part of the world. From reading high-level articles about the region, it can be difficult to really understand what's going on, and so my hope is that these interviews somewhat bring it to life, as well as stoking your curiosity to go find out more. On that, do take a look in the archive for more episodes that we've done, but for now, let's enjoy the rest of this funky intro music and then get started with the show. Near to where I live in Nairobi is a Japanese cafe. Whenever I've been, the food has been delicious, and the small place is full of people from Japan enjoying ramen noodles and cold imported beer. I thought it would be interesting to interview the owner to learn about how the business started. It turns out that Wangari and her husband have cornered down a niche market in the city. Both were born and raised in Kenya, independently decided to learn Japanese as kids, and ended up getting married after a mutual friend introduced them so they could connect on a shared love for Japan. Today, they run a diverse portfolio of small businesses to serve Japanese consumers in Kenya. In the interview, we discuss how their business came to be, the interplay of owning a safari company, supermarket, cafe and farm all geared towards the Japanese market, and practicalities of, for example, selling bento boxes in Nairobi. It's a really interesting example of finding a business area that's aligned with your personal interests and skill sets, and then occupying that niche to a very high standard. Anyway, without any further ado, here is Wangari. Cool. So we're here today with Wangari from Kenya. Wangari, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome to Kenya.
Thanks. So we're currently sat drinking Japanese tea in your Japanese supermarket. Did you call it a Japanese supermarket?
Yes, yes, we do.
Fantastic. And then there's the cafe, which is just around the corner as well, in the same sort of block.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Just to get us started, can you tell us a bit about Kenya and a bit about yourself?
So Kenya is... I started to run Kenya about 5 years ago after the original founder retired back to Japan. She had been doing this for around 10 years and she wanted to retire and go back to Japan. And so she was looking for people who would either take it on and continue as a way of having continuity and also taking care of the Japanese community that was in Nairobi. At the same time, I had sort of also established that I wanted to start a food business. And through my husband, who has interests in the Japanese community, where he runs a safari company that handles Japanese tourists, he had known this lady, Reiko, for many years by giving her business of the Japanese bento box. So when they had known each other for a long time, and she mentioned that, she was going back to Japan and she needed to get somebody else to continue with the business. And at that point, David knew that it would be very suitable for me. First, because of my love of Japanese culture, Japan, the Japanese people. And he knew that, this is something that I might want to try. Mm-hmm. And so he came and asked, would you be interested to do this? And I jumped at it. I was like, cool. This is a wonderful idea. Let me go and see what it is. Mm-hmm. So I went into her kitchen for around 2 months just to intern with her and learn about the cuisine and what she was doing. And spending time with her, I saw that, I could do this. I can challenge it and learn more. And that's how it started.
Very cool. Okay, so Reiko, so she started maybe 15 years ago.
That's right.
Okay, so she was based in Nairobi as well?
That's right, yep.
And did she have the same premises that we're sat in now?
No, so she's been in several premises. So the last premise that Kenya was on Riverside Drive. Okay. It was a house that she used it multi-purpose. It was a dual house. She lived in it, and downstairs was the shop. Mm-hmm. So when she left, I also had the same. I didn't have a premise to set it up in. So I sort of set it up also in my house for a short time. as I try to get a place to position it, or a little store like this. And one afternoon when I was doing a delivery and I was on Lenana Road, I saw the sign of shops to let, and I jumped at the opportunity because in this area, that's where a lot of the Japanese people and Southeast Asians, there's a big number of them who live in this area. So it was the area that I was looking for, and so when this came up in 2015, I jumped it in and I got the space.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's going to be lots of things sort of for us to talk about with the business. But I think, the thing which I'm sort of struck with at the beginning was you said that you've always had an interest in the Japanese culture. Where's that come from?
I'm not sure. Sometimes I think in my past life I must have been Japanese because I studied the Japanese language when I was studying for college. It was an added advantage to have an extra language. So I studied French. And I thought to myself, I want to do something different from everybody else. And I think a crazy idea came to my mind. Why don't I study Japanese? I often ask my mom, so when I said I want to study Japanese, why did you even respond? Because she responded instantly, came to the Japanese embassy and asked, is there a place where if somebody is interested in learning Japanese language, they can get? And the funny story is this. I always try to think, what an interesting story this is. My Japanese language teacher, the first person who told me about Japan and anything about it, is actually was married to Reiko.
No.
Who I ended up 25 or 20 odd years later buying her business. So I learned language and culture from Ueda Sensei, and I learned the food from Reiko Ueda. Interesting circle.
I mean, that is a very influential family that they've had.
Yes, they have had a very big influence on me. So back then, I just studied the language, a bit of culture, then went into work as work happens. I really did not use...
What did you do?
So I was in the safari business.
Okay.
So I worked I actually ended up in the hospitality section of the safari business, where I worked for several camps in Masai Mara. And a few years, maybe 13 years ago, I left that to come and join my husband in his safari business. And we set up a camp in Masai Mara also. But for everyday work, that didn't involve me every day. So I needed something that I would do something every day. And being based here in Nairobi, that's why the food business sounded like a good thing to do. But also, the safari business over the last couple of years has been facing a lot of challenges, from terrorism to maybe I think a difference of interest in tourists around the world, having more options to go to, maybe a little bit of underdevelopment of our tourist product. So the safari business changed, and the numbers of tourists that we would receive several years ago really dropped. And so we were thinking that we needed to diversify, because we were 100% in that, and that's what we depended on. And we felt that we needed to diversify into something that's not affected by terrorism, that's not affected very much by different political incidences, something that we could have a little bit more control or predictability to. So we needed to diversify into that area. But with our strengths being in the tourism and hospitality business, we still wanted to be somewhere in that sphere, and also the investment that we could afford to put in felt, a food business in Nairobi looked like, the low-lying fruit that we could be able to harness. So basically that's how Junior has evolved to where we are today.
Very cool. Okay, so you've sort of always had this interest in Japanese culture, and then through various turns and luck, you've sort of ended up being here. The businesses you've got the sort of supermarket, which you're sat in now, and the cafe as well.
Yes.
Who are the main customers in both, and do they sort of differ at all?
So we started with the first people who knew about Ginia was the Japanese customers. They depended on Ginia for certain things. A lot of the handmade foods. Before we did not have the fresh produce, and this is something that I started. Reiko did not have fresh produce. Being business people, we had also ventured into agribusiness, growing local vegetables, trying to grow flowers for the European market. So we have a farm that we've always said we are hobby farmers, but we want it to end up being a commercial farm that actually works. And we tried various things that didn't work. So the way Ginia was when I took it over, it was also facing challenges in its structure because there was a lot of influx of supermarkets that were bringing in a lot of things that the Japanese could depend on.
So previously, was it sort of a specialist store, and so that it would import particular Japanese products?
Yes, there was a little bit of import and very targeted just to the Japanese community. But for it to survive, it needed us to go more beyond just the Japanese community, and we needed also to give them more than what was being offered then. So we still have pretty much a number of things that Reiko used to supply. The sliced meats, the miso paste, and the tofu, and various other things. But we then added the fresh produce. So I just went onto the internet and I asked myself, do the Japanese eat other things, other vegetables that are not available in Nairobi? And I went to the internet and I saw, wow, there was a whole list of other vegetables that I could grow.
All right, so someone had made a list of these are the main vegetables eaten in Japanese cuisine.
Yeah.
And you could then sort of go through them and see if they were already being grown in
Kenya.
Okay.
Yes. So that's what I did. And then we started to try. So growing different things.
Right. What did you grow?
Apparently the Japanese have their own radish.
Okay, a particular Japanese...
A particular radish
okay.
that is predominantly used in Japanese cuisine. The Koreans have their own radish.
Okay.
So I started to grow the Japanese radish. I started to grow some burdock root. I started to grow some different salads. We have them here. But one of the things, the Japanese are very particular about what they eat. And they prefer a lot of highly good quality, highly well-grown food. So when I grow the food on my farm, they're able to get traceability of what they eat, and then they can trust what they eat because it's all been grown on one farm. We are not an organic farm, but we use good agricultural practices. We do a lot of positive things like that are in organic farming, like using organic manure, pesticide control through pest control through plants, like different plants that keep away pests. There's one Japanese vegetable, the chrysanthemum greens, which is a very good pest controller, and so we now grow it on the farm as a vegetable and as a pest control. So we adapt those kind of things. We have a good water source. So we were able to offer them. We are able to offer our customers good fresh vegetable, which we bring once a week from the farm, and we sell on our Saturday vegetable market.
Very cool.
And that changed immediately. That changed the trajectory of the business, just bringing in the vegetables, because then now the Japanese people who are in Nairobi, and even others who came to hear about it, and they, once in a while they like to eat Southeast Asian food, or they change a little bit of their food. I mean, you can also get cabbage or lettuce, things that are in continental cuisine. But because of the freshness and where they come from and all those guarantees, we've grown outside of just the Japanese market, and we have more.
Right. So have you always had this farm?
Yes, we've always had it.
Okay, and before you were saying you were just growing sort of local food for...
Yeah.
But now you've got this shop. It's a great synergy where you've had this farm before, and now you've got the supply and the vehicle to deliver it.
That's right.
Yeah, you've then got this market to deliver it to.
Yes.
So that must be great. Okay.
Yeah, so it was a struggle to get a consistent market when we grew just for the local market, because the local market has a lot of other external influences that you cannot be in control of. So, for example, you can plant lots of cabbage and everybody else planted lots of cabbage. So when you come in the market, nobody needs your cabbage. So I sort of stopped farming first to be able to understand which direction that I wanted to take it to. I tried various things, like I had a little stall in one local market, but it was still very difficult to predict what to grow, when to grow it, and all that. But then now, when we created our own market here, that had a specific kind of food that you would find, I found that now that made sense, and we can continuously now plan based on that, and even our growth we can easily plan based on that, because we have seen the trends that has been set.
All right, so the Japanese community, was it before you? Were they unable to get the Japanese radish?
Yeah,
Really? So how many people roughly? How many Japanese people are roughly living in?
I understand there are about probably 800 of them, families, men, children, and adults and children.
Yeah.
Not very many, but we expect them to increase, because Japan is increasing its position in Africa and interest in Africa, and Kenya being its hub for a lot of this. I have seen increase in Japanese companies, so I expect that the growth shall continue.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so roughly 800. So is it roughly 800 people?
Yeah.
800 people. Okay. God, it doesn't sound that very many, does it?
No. It's a very small number.
How many different Japanese people do you think have come to your cafe?
When we started the cafe, I have seen Japanese people who were never customers of the shop, the supermarket, come to the cafe, which has been wonderful, because they were local. They know how to survive here without necessarily their Japanese favorite ingredients. They have figured a way to survive, but somehow the cafe has brought them out, and I've got to meet new Japanese people that have been here. Some tell me they've been here for so long, and I'm like, I've never met you before. Yeah. How come? So, I mean, we've gotten a good number of them coming through. The goodness about the thing about the cafe is that we're doing home style cooking. And that's very close to a lot of Japanese people's heart. Yeah. So,
what are some of the popular dishes? Yeah.
Some of the popular dishes, they keep changing because I keep changing the menu. But I have a lot of the Japanese people are bachelors. They haven't yet come with families. Some don't have families. We are seeing also very many younger Japanese coming. And one of our most popular is katsudon. So katsudon is a donburi, is a bowl of rice with something on top. Okay. So this one has a pork cutlet, and it has an egg sauce. So that's real home cooking.
Okay. And it's like comfort food.
It's comfort food. Yeah. There's also shogayaki. Shogayaki is pork and ginger. Also very easy to make at home and probably eaten a lot. There's a Japanese curry. And we can have various twists to the curry. We can have a cutlet in it. We can have a curry soup. So there are many other options. And the good thing that I've also found out is that when I introduce them to non-Japanese people also, because one of the aims of creating the cafe was I realized that my store might not have a big influence or a big impact if I do not reach out to more of the local people. And they would come to the store and, they would look at all these strange things to them. And I would tell them, no, you could cook this at home. You can eat this at home. It's not complicated. You can adapt a Japanese meal once a week in your menu. And they would look at me and say, well, okay. And they would walk out of the store. So I thought to myself, the store, if I could only cook this food and get people to taste it, then they would see what I was talking about. And so to take care of people who asked me for bento boxes and food in general, and also to take care of growth for us, we thought, what, let's put up a cafe. So when the space came available just here, I thought, this is perfect to have it just here.
Yeah.
So if somebody enjoyed something at the cafe, they could come and pick it up from the store, and then they could try it at home.
Okay. So who does who's the chef? Who does the cooking at the cafe?
I have a team. I have a main chef who we searched for with our history, knowing there was a Japanese restaurant several years ago that was run by a Japanese chef. He was a chef and he ran the business. And so it was shut a few years ago. So we went out all the way to Kitengela to go and look for some of the people that he had trained. And we had one, my husband had one.
What were they doing in Kitengela?
They're doing different things. So
how did you know they were there?
So we tracked them down through one waiter that was in one of the Japanese restaurants, and he was a colleague to one of their chefs. And we asked him, so where is so and so? Do you know where so and so? He was their manager at it was called Nihonjin Club. Nihonjin Club means Japanese people club. And so he was the manager at Nihonjin Club. And we were told that you can find him in Kitengela. That's where he has a school.
Kitengela's like maybe an hour drive from...
Yeah, or towards Athi River. So, we got his contact and we went and met him there. So we asked him, do you have contacts of the people who you worked with, who could be young, who were younger then, who had been trained how to make Japanese food, and where could they be and what are they doing? And he had the contact of two of them. Unfortunately, one was not interested in coming back to Nairobi. He had already settled in his rural life, and I think we didn't entice him enough. But his specialty was also making sushi, and we really were not geared to making sushi because sushi is not Japanese home food. It's also for special occasions, even in Japan.
Oh, okay.
So we were not very keen on having just a sushi chef. We wanted somebody who knew more about the Japanese traditional foods. And that's how we ended up with Chef John. The rest of the team was the junior team. So we used to do bento boxes.
So what is a bento box?
So a bento box is a traditional lunch box. In Japan, it's very popular to have a boxed lunch for lunch. So it's either from home or from the train station or from the convenience store. So when you go to Japan, you see these lunch boxes all over the place. And they are wholesome, very delicious. It's an everyday.
What's in there?
They have a variety of them, and in Japan there's 4 seasons which they use to even change their cuisine. So because in different seasons you get different ingredients, so they change they sometimes change based on the four seasons, but you get the regular karage, which is the fried chicken, the tonkatsu, which is the breaded pork. You get the shogayaki, so you get the daily kind of food. But the emphasis is into food that is not soupy, that will not lick, that will still be enjoyable cold because it's enjoyed at room temperature. So a lot of emphasis is based on that. You will find a rice ball in it, or just some rice, some vegetables. So it will be a nicely balanced boxed lunch. That you can enjoy in different places in Japan.
And so do you sell bento boxes?
Yes, yes.
Do people bring their own box and then you fill it up? Or do you give
There's
them...
disposable. So
boxes.
there are disposable boxes, and we arrange depending on... So what you do is that you choose the main that you would want to have. So let's say you want to have fried chicken. And then we choose the other accompaniments to go with the fried chicken. So we balance the textures, the flavors, the colors. We have to pay attention to lots of details in Japanese. When you're making Japanese food, there's the rule of 5.
What's
5
that?
colors.
You need 5 colors per
5
meal.
tastes.
Okay.
And 5 methods of cooking. So
really? 5 methods of cooking for every meal?
For every meal.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah, but somehow they get it. I guess you could have about 4, but you could try. Okay. But the 5 colors sort of help you to know that you have a balanced meal, and that you have taken care of all your nutritional requirements.
Did you do a different lunch each day that people get?
So we have about, I think there are 5 different sets that we have made, just to make it easier for lots of people to be able to order a bento box. And also coming from, for the Japanese people, they're used to it. Whatever is in the bento box, you look at it and they have a lot of variety in their convenience store. So you look at whatever you want. Okay. But here, because we don't have already so many people who are taking different bento boxes, we try to create about 5. So you can get around 5 of them from our option. And you just pick what you like.
And do people come into the cafe every day and pick it up and then go? Or do they pre-order?
So they pre-order. Okay. A bento box needs to be pre-planned because there are little other things in it that take time to be prepped. It's always, we say that you have to order your bento box before 10 o'clock if it's for lunch. If it's for dinner, you have to order it before 3 o'clock so that we can be able to make it a complete bento box. Yeah.
How much does it cost?
So they vary from, I think our list bento box goes for 950 and the highest is about 1,500.
Okay, so between $10 and $15.
Yes.
Is that quite expensive?
I think it's reasonable.
Okay.
In Nairobi, it's reasonable. What we've also done is that one of the things that I keep challenging at the cafe is to be able to have reasonably priced food that's well balanced, that where you get value for what you're paying for. So it's something that we have worked very hard on to try and make sure that it's something that you can afford for a daily lunch. Like when you go to the other cafes, you spend about the same amount of money, and you don't even get the variety that you get that you get in a bento box. So
makes sense.
Yeah, it's great value.
Yeah, cool. How did the businesses interplay with the safari business? You mentioned that you've diversified, but I think you said you still kept the safari business. Is David having a lot of Japanese tourists?
Yeah. So we still maintain that, and that's actually David's core business. The cafe engineer he supports, but his core business is the safari business and the camp in Masai Mara, and his business is still 95, almost 100% Japanese
really?
Clientele.
So how did he get into that at the beginning?
So it's a very interesting story also. I mean, he also, I hadn't met him.
Yeah.
And he also went to study Japanese
so I've got to ask,
in Japan.
roughly how many people go to study Japanese in Kenya?
It's not a big number, but
Yeah.
it's been growing. When we did it, we were very few. I know about to this day, I know about 5 people
Really?
who we went to school with around the same time. But it's been growing. The number has grown slightly.
Yeah.
I think it will grow even more because of the plans that the Japanese government has. And it would be an advantage to learn the language because there are opportunities, there are big opportunities with working for Japanese businesses or even working in Japan or even going to school in Japan.
Yeah.
So I expect that to increase.
You and David both so I've got to ask, how did you guys meet, and how soon did you realise that you both learned Japanese?
I think our interest in Japan and Japanese culture is what brought us together.
Okay.
Because one of his friends or colleagues was talking to me on the phone, and where I worked, and he told him, there's this girl that I know who also speaks Japanese like you.
Yeah.
And I think David, out of curiosity, must have said, I want to meet her. That's unique.
Yeah.
And I think our love and our passion for many things Japanese brought us together, and the rest is history. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to be able to bring together that passion, and it has brought us this business opportunity to
Absolutely.
also venture into.
So the fact that David could speak Japanese, that kind of meant that he was a natural fit for running safaris for Japanese tourists.
That's right. Yeah. So he was employed at the time. He worked for a safari company that had a lot of Japanese tourists, but was not employed for very long because then he started his own company. And just last week, 1st of July, we celebrated 20 years.
Wow.
Of that company, of Greatland. And so we have continued. So we still make bento. So now we make bento boxes for Greatland and their customers and other safari companies that have Japanese tourists. We still make the bento boxes because they, when Japanese tourists come, sometimes they really miss their home food after being out on holiday for maybe 10 or so days. So it's always a good opportunity for them to eat something that's close to home.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So do you make them in the cafe and then sort of distribute them out from there?
Yeah. So we make them at the cafe, and then when depending on what itinerary the customer has, they either come and pick it up from here, or we drop them it off to some convenient place to them. So it all depends on the nature of the safari. Yeah. Sometimes we do them when they're departing to the airport.
Yeah, right.
They're like, oh, I'm so tired of this continental food. I would love to have some Japanese food on my way back out. So yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so you've got you've got safari, you've got the farm, you've got the supermarket and the cafe, which all sort of seem to have synergies with each other. Is there something which is missing? Is there, from doing this, are you like, oh, there's an opportunity here if we, I don't know, started a tea company or something? Is there anything that you can see how this trend might continue?
There's lots of things, but we are also at a point where we want to focus our attention to developing the supermarket because there's potential to develop that. The cafe we've just started, and we can see the potential in that. So one of to take you back a little bit, in 2016, as we were trying to think And we could see the dangers and what was happening to the tourism industry and the way it was becoming unreliable and undependable. So we decided to take a trip to Japan to go and learn what were the Japanese trends for the safari business. We went basically for the safari business, and I also went on a culinary journey to try and get the different tastes of the Japanese food and to understand the Japanese food better. But our main agenda was to try and go and understand where the Japanese tourists' mind was, so that we could come back here and prepare ourselves for that. But there had also been a lot of talk of diversify the Kenyan tourist product. That it was getting tired and same old. So we constantly had this question: what does that mean, diversify and different? And because everybody was doing safari or a hotel or a safari company, and that we could see where the challenges were. So we kept on asking ourselves, what can we do? We don't have the kind of money to start an amusement park. That's a diversification. That's a product that can be put out here, but that needs big money. So we went on this trip, not knowing what we were going to find. So we went for Japan Travel Fair, one of the biggest in the world. And in that, there were some side meetings. And for love of food, I picked one that had to do with gastronomic tourism. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even know what it meant until I attended the meeting, but it had food and it had tourism, so I was like, that's a good mix. Yeah. Then we also attended an outbound tourism one and an inbound tourism one. We wanted to understand everything, and the gastronomy tourism side meeting is what inspired the cafes. We're going to do this. We always played with the idea, but we did not maybe have the thing, the drive, the push, the reason, the confidence to go for it. And in that meeting, I went and learned that food in Japan is their tourist product. It's the product that they sell. Yeah. So every tourist around the world going to Japan goes for food. And I was like, oh, there's diversification right there. So let's go and diversify the product and let's make a restaurant. And maybe we shall attract the tourists to our restaurant also, but more so attract the local people. And then this is not dependent on terrorism. It's not it doesn't get hurt by terrorism much, because the locals, once they know to eat the Japanese food, they will still come to the restaurant. And so that's how we diversified the tourism product that needed diversification and improvement, and our own having another business that we could rely on for ourselves.
Thank you.
So at that meeting, we learned a lot that then we came to implement more confidently, that, we were not just targeting the Japanese who are living here, and that this is something that we could grow into various directions. So in Japan, there's so much good food, different kinds of food, small restaurants. So, we came from a background of you have to have big restaurants to make economic sense, to make business sense. And we went and saw very small, tiny restaurants with 6 seats or 9 seats or 15 seats. Yeah. So that really was helped us to be able to bring down our to set up at a point where we were comfortable. I don't like big. I never imagined of having a very big restaurant, but when I went to Japan and saw that what I have in my imagination can actually work, I'm always afraid of mass. I'm afraid of mass production of especially food. So I couldn't do. I think if I saw 50 people, I'd have a mental shutdown. But when I see a few people and I can control the product and the quality, that's very important for me. And that's very much the way they do it in Japan.
Yeah.
So I was able to see firsthand how I could actually actualize something that was just in my mind or just in our mind, and how we could do it at our scale. So the restaurant is just a 25-seater. In Japanese numbers, it's almost 2 restaurants. So we are happy with that.
Very good. Yeah. Well, we'll just do a few more questions, if that's all right. I'm interested, since you've sort of started working on this full time, what have been some of the surprises that you've had? So if you sort of compare what it was like when you started compared to what it is now, like what are some of the ways in which it's different?
The surprises. Can I think of some surprises? Some pleasant surprises, especially from our Japanese customers, is they have said that in Nairobi, they think we are the most authentic. Even visiting Japanese people who live in Japan most of the time, and maybe just visiting, they've also made that comment, and they've also made comments like, some of the food you get here is in Tokyo quality. So those are pleasant surprises. I don't know. I don't think that we expected to match that. I always wanted to do. I always aim for the best. So I always tell my staff, we have to be the best Japanese restaurant. But that's just saying it. Actualizing it is another thing. And I didn't know what that meant. And the standards in Japan are so high that when the Japanese say that, then you know that you've started on the right footing. Other surprises is that not just Japanese people come to the restaurant.
Yeah, myself included.
Yourself included. I've been surprised. Where were all these people? But I know from having attended that meeting in 2016 that the Japanese government, or the tourism department of the Japanese government, about 30 years ago, made this policy to make Japanese food known around the world. And so when you go to America, if you go to Europe, you go to Asia, Japanese food is slowly becoming very, very popular amongst the people, not just sushi, even other different things. At that meeting, we were shown how Japanese food names that are in Japanese are found in some of the haute cuisine French restaurants in France. Or
what do you mean?
So, for example, maybe I remember one was hamachi. Hamachi is a type of a fish. So you would look at the menu in a French restaurant, a fine dining French restaurant that is selling hamachi, but they don't call it the French name or the English name, yellowtail. It is named in the French restaurant, whatever, hamachi something, but in a French restaurant. Or different Japanese ingredients you would find being adopted in other cuisines. So they have successfully managed to get other people to adopt, other chefs around the world to adopt Japanese styling, Japanese ingredients into their restaurants. And so that's the reason why everybody now, they can attract around 2 million tourists into Japan, and almost all those tourists are not going to see the temples and the old and the other different cultures there. One of the biggest thing is that they want to go to all these ramen restaurants, tonkatsu restaurants, Japanese tea ceremony, or the much longer kaiseki, which is like the haute cuisine of Japanese food. So yeah.
Very cool. All right. And have there been any challenges in running a business?
Yeah, I think the farm is the biggest challenge.
Is it? Of all of them?
Of all of them.
No way. Why is that?
Farming has a lot of enemies, I think. From the sun, the African sun,
What do you mean?
The heat of
it's too hot for
too hot for some of the vegetables. I have had to put infrastructure there to be able to help my veggies grow peacefully and happily. But slowly we have overcome some of those. But I don't think there's anything like overcoming farming challenges, because different seasons present different challenges. Other challenges, just the strings of business, when you have to, when you're running the business yourself and you're thinking everything and setting it up, from startup. I'm not Japanese, so I have to read a lot so that I do not make any blunders or any obvious mistakes that would offend the Japanese people.
I've got to ask, have you done any of those? Have you made like a little blunder or like something in the menu?
I think so, but they're very gentle with me.
They don't take it offense. They don't take offense.
They don't take offense.
Okay.
Some are very nice. They come back and they tell me, that's not the way we do it. You could try this or the other. And so they, if you go to the cafe, you will see I have another second menu that I've never really printed on the proper menu. And that second menu has been developed by our customers.
Okay.
And they came and suggested different things. And so they would come and say, what I did is when I launched the cafe, I send a message to all my customers from the store, and I told them there's a Japanese drama series that I love to watch, and it's based on a little restaurant. It's called Midnight Diner, and the story behind Midnight Diner is that the chef does not have a menu. And what you do, you come and request whatever you want. And provided he has the ingredients, he'll make it. And so I told my customers, I'm going to have a simple menu, but please come to the restaurant. And if you want something, just request it. And if we have the ingredients, we'll make it.
Great.
And so the second menu has actually been developed out of that.
Interesting.
Because I wanted to, when I opened the restaurant, I was not very sure what to put in. If you think about all the Japanese food that you could put in a menu, then you would not be able to run a restaurant. So I needed to start with some of the favorites, some home favorites, and also some not so home favorites, because people go to restaurants to eat some of the things that they cannot enjoy at home, that are only made in restaurants or are best made in restaurants, not necessarily that not made at home, and various other things. So I've been fortunate that the customers have come forward with different suggestions, and they think about it. They come and tell me, you can make this. It's not so difficult, and everything is available.
Yeah.
And people love it. And then I'm also very responsive to my customers, because that's actually how we have grown the store, by listening to them and talking to them and asking them lots of questions about what don't we have, what do you need, and what can't you find, and we can provide it. And so we've developed the menu that way. So.
Fantastic, very cool.
Yeah.
And people who are listening at home, how can they learn more about Junior? Where can they find you in Nairobi? What's sort of the best way for people to try and sort of learn more?
We have online presence. You can find us on the social media. We are on Facebook. We are on Google Maps. I'm not very tech savvy, social media savvy. I have an Instagram that I don't remember to upload photos on. My daughters tell me I don't know how to do it, so I think I've lost the confidence to do it at all. We are here on Lenana Road, both the restaurant and the shop. Yeah. So you can easily find us there. I love to cook, and I want more people to adopt one or two Japanese recipes in their menu. It's really it brings variety into your weekly dinners or weekly meals. If you could adapt a few Japanese tricks, you could be much more healthier. You would feel very good about it.
Well, actually, I mean, I'm I need to decide what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. So what would you recommend that I cook? Bearing in mind I don't eat meat. So what would you recommend? What's a good Japanese dish I can make this evening?
Yeah, Japanese food is very, very healthy. Actually, you asked me about challenges at the cafe. Taking care of vegetarians.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm so sorry.
In Japanese cuisine is a very big challenge because the Japanese are not vegetarian. They have a very healthy cuisine that knows how to consume the red meats and the meats and all, but they don't have a much emphasis on vegetarian. But you could get various vegetarian options. Tofu is very healthy and very nutritious, and you could do so many things with tofu.
Yeah.
You can have it for a meal, you can have it for a snack, you can have it with your salad, and it can be a very good source of your protein. If you stir fry with mushroom, and then just add a teriyaki sauce or just soy sauce to it, you have a good vegetarian, well-balanced, delicious meal.
Great. Well, as soon as we stop recording, I'll go and buy that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Wangari, thanks so much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Cheers. Before we head, just a quick moment to say thank you for listening. You can see show notes for this episode by heading to the new website www.theeastafricabusinesspodcast.com. If you'd like to learn more about the show and the work we do, then you can have a bit of an explore on the website and also subscribe to the various places such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and email. Finally, if you felt this was a good episode and you've been enjoying the show recently, then please do consider leaving a rating for the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. You could also tell a friend who's curious about these sorts of businesses that we feature, and indeed, if you know of a business that you'd like to be interviewed on the show, please feel free to reach out via any of the channels mentioned above, and we'll see what we can do to have an interview and showcase them on the show. In any case, have a great week and speak to you soon.